Hello friends, in this lecture, we're going to make the player turn left and right. Okay, so, in Gun Survivors, we scaled the flipbook to make the player look the opposite direction. In this one, we're not going to be able to do that, because we're going to have other things inside of the player that we want to turn as well. So instead of trying to rotate every component one by one, we're just going to rotate the whole actor. So that's what we're going to be doing in this lecture. Let's see how to do that inside of our code. The first thing we're going to do here is going to be creating a function called update direction. This is going to take in the move action value, because move action value is what determines our direction. So we're going to pass this to this function, and inside of that function we're going to rotate the player based on this. So let's go ahead and create the function body, which is going to be void update direction. It's going to take in a float called move direction. Just like that. Let's copy and paste this and create the function body as well. We're going to put this just underneath move. Just like that. So let's talk about rotating the whole actor. We have a variable called controller, and this is the controller that's currently controlling the player. There's a function on this called set rotation, set control rotation, and this is going to rotate the whole actor, and it's going to take in an F rotator. F rotators have 3 arguments: the pitch, the roll, and the yaw. The yaw is what we care about because that is the Z rotation. So that's the only one that we're going to change. But before we can do all of this, we first need to check a couple of things. First of all, we're going to get the control rotation to take a look at the current rotation of the player. We're going to save that in an F rotator called current rotation. Just like that. And then we're going to create an if statement for the move direction. We're going to check if it is less than 0 or greater than 0. We don't really care if it is exactly 0 because that means we're not moving. And in that case, we don't want to change the direction of the player anyways. So this is the first thing we check. Are we going to the left or are we going to the right? After we check that, we're going to check the current rotation of the player. Because if we are going to the left and the player is already rotated, we don't want to rotate it again. And to check that, we're going to check the yaw of the current rotation. If it is equal to 180, that means the player is rotated to the left. If it's equal to 0, that means the player is rotated to look to the right. So because this case here is going to be -1, and that means we're going to the left, we're going to first check if the current rotation is 180 or not. So we're going to say current rotation.yaw not equal to 180. In that case, we're going to set the yaw to be 180, making us turn left. We're going to say controller set control rotation. This is going to take in a new F rotator. The first argument is going to be the pitch. The second will be the yaw, which is what we want to change. And the last one is going to be the roll. For the first one and the last one, we're just going to use whatever it is in the current rotation. So we'll say current rotation.pitch and then 180 to change the yaw, and then current rotation.roll. Next up, we're going to do a similar thing inside of this if statement. And as a small challenge, see if you can do that yourself. It's going to be very similar to what we did up here. Okay, I'm going to simply copy and paste this. In this if statement, we're going to the right. So we should set the yaw to be 0. But before we do that, first we're going to check if it's already 0, if it's not 0, and only then we're going to set it to be 0. Awesome. So that is going to be the update direction function, and it's going to rotate us left or right depending on the move action value right after we call add movement input. Let's make sure every file is saved and then we're going to exit out of Unreal, rebuild the project, and then we're going to test this. So let's go ahead and test this. When I go left, the player should turn, but as you can see, something is a little weird. The player does indeed turn, but the camera is also turning. That's why we get this weird effect. To fix that, we're going to open up the blueprints for the player, and then we're going to click on the spring arm, and for the rotation of the spring arm, we're going to say world. This is going to make it so that the rotation of the spring arm isn't affected by the set control rotation we're making. It's going to stay the same. Let's save this, compile it, and test this again. And now, as you can see, the player is indeed turning to the left when we go left, and it turns right, back again when we go right. Perfect, so that's basically what we want to do in this lecture. Let's do a quick recap before we end it. In this lecture, we created the update direction function. We're calling it right after we call add movement input, and we're passing the move action value. And as you know, it is move action value that's what's determining the direction of the player. If it's -1, that means we're going to the left, and if it's +1, that means we're going to the right. If it's 0, that means we're not moving. Inside of update direction, we're checking if this is -1 or +1. If it is -1, and if the current Z rotation of the player is not 180, let's set it to be 180, because that's going to make the player turn left. If it's already 180, we're not going to do it again. And in the opposite case, if we're going to the right, and the Z rotation of the player is not 0, let's go ahead and set it to be 0, which is going to make the player turn right. So that's all we have to do to make this work.